I'll address the market first. And as far as anticipating, these kind of price levels, the answer is yes. When I wrote the first primer on silver, it's called Get the Skinny on Silver Investing. It was a takeoff on the Idiot's Guide collection. Was approached by the publisher, and it was certainly not my best work, but it's kind of a good overview of the silver market. And I said, I saw $100 silver, and that was, like I said, 2005. I also have said many times on other interviews that I expected the market to move similar to what it did in 1980, which was basically 90% of the move came in the last 10% of the time. That's not a precise number, but it's to convey the idea that at the last leg of the major trend, it will be a large capital appreciation in a short amount of time. And that's where I think we are now. As far as the top price, I mean, this is why I'm so happy you invited me back. I honor your thoughts on it as much as my own. I don't really see the dollar going to zero, but the trend is obviously there. And what happens? And there's several scenarios, but I think the two main scenarios are one that I'm somewhat a proponent of, and that is that there will be a new system implemented or forced upon us. Could be something along the lines of a central bank digital currency before the dollar makes it to absolute zero. On the other hand, I cannot rule out, and I'm not going to speak for you, but want to hear more what you have to say than what I think. They may have miscalculated, and we could get in a situation where things grind down to where the system just does fail. Bank closures, uncertainty in the market, and what do we do at that point? As you pointed out, in my view, accurately, and I thought more like you in my earlier days than I do today. Doesn't make me right or wrong, just older. That we could see a situation where we do go to some type of pseudo, gold standard. I don't think we'll have a real true gold standard or bimetallic standard again, but we'll have some system tied to gold, tied to silver, bartering silver at some level, that type of thing. I can't rule that out. I think the system could get away from the powers that be, is what I'm saying. And if that is the case, then what does that look like? And that's really hard to put any kind of a scenario on.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do see it as an inevitability, because that's where all fiat system leads. Like, just logically, whenever I go back to it and I think, well, is the dollar going to absolute zero? I'm trying to think of a scenario where it can't happen. And the only scenario I can think of where it doesn't happen is where they freeze everything and then the banks collapse. Because the only thing that keeps the banks alive is the inflationary process. Otherwise, they all fail on a domino. So no matter, like, I don't want to be part of the people that are predicting the end of society from the end of the dollar. I mean, you have people like Keith Weiner that say, well, if that really happens, then all this capital that feeds all the farms that feed all of America and all the Western world. Well, if they can't have the credit flowing through their capital systems, then they all break apart. We can't feed that many people in America and half the population dies. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. But then at the same time, I don't want to be part of that, of those people where people think that I think society is ending. But I just don't see a way that the dollar can survive and the banks can survive. It's going to be one or the other. Either the bank system is going to die, and then you have a financial reset that way, or the money is going to die, and then there will be a financial reset that way. But I always go back to hyper deflation and hyperinflation are really the same thing. It's just that the purchasing power goes back into gold and silver anyway. And in terms of a gold standard, what do I see about a gold standard? I don't see any big like UN or let's say United Financial Nations or the financial UN or whatever the equivalent of that would be, a Bretton Woods system or however you want to describe it. I don't see the big honchos getting together and deciding on a new gold standard and then everything's fine. That's not happening. But what I do see as possible is if the dollar really doesn't work, then we have to go back to the most liquid commodity, which is gold and silver. Gold on a deep storage basis and for big capital transactions, and silver on a retail basis. I don't think it's going to be permanent, but I don't see any other way forward. We have to get back to liquid commodity as money, and from there we can build up a new credit system. But the dollar isn't born out of nothing; it's born out of silver, and then it switched to gold. So we have to go back to that.
I'll start my mission statement to teach and empower people to understand the benefits of an honest monetary system. I mean, that's why I get up every day. And I'd say the bright spots are several. One is that at the end of the great inflations, we see that people themselves come up with ideas to mitigate the problem. One you could say is a cryptocurrency. I'm not favorable to Bitcoin. I was favorable to the concept of Bitcoin in the initial white paper, but it's basically morphed off to basically the exact opposite of the original white paper. But that is a way out, you might say, as far as a competitor to the status quo. The one I think is the most logical and has the most traction is what my friends are doing in the Citizens for Sound Money and the amount of states in the union that have reenacted legislation to use gold and silver in all transactions as long as both parties agree. And I think that could be, let's say, for a thought experiment, Rafi, that there is a digital currency and you take it or leave it. Well, in those 14 states that have gold and silver availability, you don't have to take it. You could just start using your gold and silver. And there's lots of ways to use it now that weren't available a decade ago. For example, these gold backs, that's 1/1000th of a of a gram, or excuse me, that's 1/1000th of an ounce, which at 5,000 the ounce, that's a $5 bill in gold right there. So it is pretty low denominations. You had the problem with gold previously where you couldn't divide it to those kind of units. You can now. Silver is the same thing, and then there's digital gold and silver, which you can trust or not trust, but it's a way to transact, electronically, as long as you have trust in the system. And there are systems set up with digital transfers that are accounted for. You can go visit the vaults and that type of thing. So I think it's a states' rights issue in the United States. I'm not saying globally, that's pushing back on the federal system. And of course, the Federal Reserve, as we all know, isn't federal or doesn't have any real reserves. Nonetheless, I think that's an opportunity there. And then if things go into, let's say, what you call the the end game, which I love that term, people are intuitive. They can adapt quickly. So, if you look back into smaller communities like Argentina, Venezuela, Turkey, I mean, there's many in the Silver Manifesto that were fairly recent. And what do? Well, the people gather together in kind of a flea market atmosphere where they barter and they also trade in the US dollar also. I'll have to admit that in the greenback, but gold and silver. And I was a bit naive thinking, I'm thinking as an American, oh, gold coins, silver coins, constitutional silver. And that's true. But really, most of the transactions are, gold jewelry, gold chains, coins as well. But, a gold bracelet is still gold. A silver ring is still silver. So I think that there's enough of opportunities to mitigate the damage of control that the bankers want to maintain. And that's pretty evident in my view.
Let me just riff off of what you're saying. So the move from, let's say, $2,000 gold to where we are now, 5,200, and the move from silver to about 25, let's say, to whatever, 90 now. I understood, this is one of the things that I understood intellectually, but I never really experienced it. That I knew that if I just kept stacking, and that includes gold and silver mining stocks to some degree, and that kind of stuff. I knew that I would gain purchasing power faster than the dollar would lose it. I understood that. But now that I'm in a war zone and the country is basically shut down, and I knew that people were struggling before, and I kept telling them, take whatever you have and get some gold and silver with whatever you have left over. And they're like, I don't have anything left over. What do I do? And I'm like, if you have nothing left over, I can't really help you. I'm not going to go into your finances and tell you what you can cut down. I'm not a financial advisor. Well, I could do that. I'm not going to spend my time doing that. It's too depressing. But now I'm really seeing it. My kids are seeing it. I have a 15-year-old. I have a 14-year-old. I have an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old who I pay chores in dimes, right?
Right.
And they're like, "Ah, how much is this worth now? How much money do I have?" And I tell them, and they're like, "Oh, how did that happen?" I'm like, "Because I paid you a dime, and I kept doing that." But I'm just sitting here as the bombs fly over my head, and I'm fine. I mean, emotionally, it's disturbing, and I don't want to see anybody get killed, but I'm not struggling. I'm just relaxed financially, and I'm watching all of my neighbors drown, and I knew it was going to happen. And it's like when COVID hit, it was like I knew something like this was going to happen. I just now I'm feeling it. Now it's really hitting me. And I knew I've always known that when silver hits triple digits and silver and gold goes to 5, 6, 7,000, where it's going to go, it's not going to be fun. I'm not having so much fun. And I know it's just going to get worse.